What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 fantasy football platform. It is the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, which includes offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more and sign up, go to all-22.com. This time, when you do, you will see two things. Two packages. The first package is called the starter package, which is a $1 subscription, which will give you access to unlimited leagues, premium articles and content, team customization, live and slow drafts, just to name a few. The second package is the All Pro package, which for this season is $9.99 for new signups. It gives you everything that's included in starter, plus it gives you all types of PFF player grades, premium statistics, team grades, premium matchup data, and a fantasy advice hotline, just to name a few other things. So we are really excited to be offering this to customers this year at a discounted price. So I hope you do go to all-22.com and sign up.
Yeah, jam-packed with a whole bunch of data within the game. And like we've teased throughout the offseason, so as you may have heard, we are still working on a lot of other really cool stuff for this summer and before the season starts. We are bearing that cross. So more is coming your way to all our lovely and loyal listeners and subscribers. So more to come there, but super excited. So if you haven't made the plunge yet, go in, check it out, find the package that's best for you, and dive right in and invite all your friends.
Love it. Thank you, everyone. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes of today, which is we're talking about edge rushers. So before last week, the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL was Nick Bosa, and that has now changed to Justin Jefferson. So that was the big news from last week. That's kind of like the only big news from last week. But it is kind of interesting considering today we are talking about edge rushers, which are in competition for the second most valuable position besides quarterbacks, kind of fighting right now with receivers and tackles. So it is really fun to watch that battle kind of happening in real time. I think it should be edge rushers, man.
Yeah, because it's like supply and demand, right? I mean, yes, there's a lot of good edge rushers because the league has become such a passing league, but I mean, we went through the wide receiver exercise and there's just so many good ones, whereas there are still not that many elite or even great pass rushers. There's a lot of great athletic specimens and dangerous players at edge, but they're not as consistently productive and great at the depth that wide receiver is. There's just so many to choose from. So you would think supply and demand would make the costliest edge rushers to be higher than that of wide receiver. But Micah Parsons hasn't bent over the Cowboys yet for his new contract. And so when that happens, that, he might turn the tide a little bit there.
I hope Parsons waits for Lamb to get paid. And isn't there another receiver waiting to get paid? Higgins. Wait for both of them to go
Chase.
Get paid.
There's still a few.
And then, like you said, $40 million a year, right? Something crazy. Gosh. But yeah, so we're going to do the same kind of exercise we did with receiver, where we say, what's our top 32 look like, right? And edge rusher, I'd say, is a little easier than receiver because there is such like there are tiers that are more clear and precise, I think. And it also gets weaker much, much quicker. But it's still not an easy position to rank. And my tier one, I was even like, it's kind of big and it could be bigger, but I'll tell you my tier one. And then you tell me if there's anybody missing, and then we'll debate it like we did last time. But my tier one includes Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Josh Allen, and Aiden Hutchinson. So sharing the screen, we got the All-22 platform here, right? Going to the players page, sorted by edge rusher. That's pretty much the top of the list. There are some guys in there that I'm seeing, right? So Jalen Phillips and Josh Allen are above in the current rankings, above Aiden Hutchinson. But in my proposition, Josh Allen, Aiden Hutchinson are in tier one, Phillips, and who is the second guy? Whatever. Those guys, Josh Allen. Nope.
Mm-hmm. No, Josh Allen is your tier one guy. It's just Phillips.
It's just Phillips. Just Phillips is outside of that. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, and Phillips, I still probably don't think he would have had a case for tier one. But given the injury, there's definitely no shot of that. I mean, I don't even think I'd put him in tier two anymore, and it's through no fault of his own. And again, as a disclaimer, for those listening. I don't even think we need a disclaimer, to be honest, because it was just a bunch of Lions fans who are also likely Michigan fans mad that I was hyping up Marvin Harrison Jr. and putting him over Lions receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. But in any event, for those listening, and if this is your first podcast, right, these rankings are, again, all 22s is as if you're building your own franchise. So if the NFL threw every player into a pool and had a startup draft tomorrow, what would that look like? Right. And so the position rankings take into account age and upside and all that good stuff too. So it's not, I think that Harrison's going to have more catches than St. Brown this year. No, he might not. He also might, given that offense. But again, these rankings are more so a holistic approach to basically who you would want on your team if you were starting a franchise and had the choice to pick between these 2 or 3 or 4 players, however, whatever you're looking at here and how you're ranking your tier. So with that in mind, calm down. I think our boy Derek at the Kool-Aid Cast for Detroit, probably just stick to those guys on me in particular, but I could take it. It's whatever. But yeah, just keep that in mind when these comes to these rankings.
That's exactly right. And this is Dynasty, and that's why you didn't hear TJ Watt, right? I know Steelers fans probably get really upset when TJ Watt isn't mentioned with that group, but TJ Watt is going to be entering his age 30 season. You're not taking a 30-year-old edge rusher over a 25-year-old edge rusher. And honestly, probably not with a lot of the rookies that entered the league this year. You're probably not taking Watt over them. So, I mean, it's a conversation, and that's what we're here to do today. But the guy that I really struggled with leaving out of tier 1 was Will Anderson. So curious how you feel about that, just considering he is 22 years old this year. This is going to be his age 22 season. And I believe he graded in the 80s last year, 81.8, right? So like that is a really good rookie season for an edge rusher on a really promising up and coming team with a defensive minded head coach. It's really hard not to put him in my tier 1. And I think there's a case that he should be.
Yeah, because you could sit here and you can wax poetic about how great everyone is that's in the tier above him, and they're fantastic, right? But if you're on the clock, are you taking Josh Allen over Will Anderson? Yes, Josh Allen, he's 27 and he's perfectly fine. He's in his prime. But that Will Anderson, still 22, turning 23 years old, that potential is tantalizing. And so it's, when you're on the clock and that little timing beeping noise is going off, are you really going to pass on Will Anderson for someone like a Josh Allen? Given that, what is 3.5, 4-year age gap? It's really tough.
And it's not even just not just the age gap, right? Because there's going to be every single year, there's going to be guys that come in that are young, right? When there's 5 new edge rushers this year that are young, but it's the fact that he's young and he's proven that he can do it at the NFL level at a very high level, right? He's already proved that.
And they just got Danielle Hunter on the other side of him too, right? His situation's gotten a bit better. I mean, the whole team has improved drastically. The Texans, they were already a really good team. They have fantastic coaching. And now he's got a legit threat on the other end of him in Danielle Hunter, who's one of the most underrated pass rushers of the last half decade of the 2020s, realistically. I don't like it when you convince me to do this on air. Like, oh yeah, let's move him up. I don't like doing that.
But we don't talk about it off air, right? So like this is genuine conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm. A part of me wants to see him do it again, right? The rational, whatever the side of the brain it is, right? That's like, hey, do it again just to be sure. Yeah, he's very good, but sophomore slumps are a thing. He's got film and tape on him now. Tackles do adjust, right? These are professionals. They get paid to make these sorts of adjustments. So maybe it's a bit of a sophomore slump, and then we'll see who the real Will Anderson is thereafter when he adjusts to the adjustments and such. But I'm ceiling guy. I'm the chaser. I'm the upside chaser. So you're not going to have me hold you back from considering moving him into tier 1. That's just never going to happen.
All right, well, let's go through our top guys, and then when we get to a place where we think he should be included, we'll bring it up and see if he falls in that tier 1. So who do you have as edge numero uno?
It's Micah Parsons. He's in arguments, I guess, really between him and Myles Garrett. I don't consider Bosa there yet. I mean, just he's a shade below them. But just as of today, I think it's a 2-horse race between him and Myles Garrett as edge 1 in the entire league, given that he's 3.5 years younger than Myles Garrett, and he's just a more versatile weapon on defense as a whole, where he can line up off the ball. You don't ever really want him to do that, but he can rush from all these different positions, over the center. He allows the defensive coordinator to exploit the biggest mismatches possible on the field, because you can line him up over the center, over the A gap. You can line him up all across the line and in coverage. If you really wanted to do that for some reason, he can do that as well. So he can really do everything for you. Between that and age, that puts him over the top for me. So I have Micah Parsons as 1 and then Myles Garrett at 2.
I have Parsons as 1 as well. 25 years old, already playing at an extremely elite level. I don't even think he's as good as he could be yet, considering he hasn't played edge that long, right? He was a linebacker. I think there's a world of improvement that he can still make. And I honestly see it on film. Like, his natural strength and agility is what makes him win at such an elite level right now. But I think when you look at Garrett and Bosa, there's a lot more technique in play when you watch those guys play football. If Parsons learns how to do those things, he's unstoppable, right? Like, that's when you talk about him becoming one of the greatest players of, the position in history. He's not there yet, because in my mind, I think he does lack a little bit of that technique, and he hasn't separated from the group in terms of play yet, right? So Parsons is going to be my number 1 as well, so we can lock him in at 1. I do struggle with the conversation for 2. So you have Garrett. I think Garrett is a fine choice. I don't think he's my choice. And the reason being is because, yes, you're looking at this, it's all blue, right? 93.6 this year, 92.6 last year, 92 the year before. Really good football player. The 3-year span's been incredible. But go ahead and pull up Nick Bosa's, right? So Nick Bosa is a full 2 years younger, and it looks pretty similar. 92.7 this past year, 90.9 the year before, 88.3 the year before that. So if you're telling me I can choose between 2 guys with very similar production, very similar scoring in all 22, and one's 2 years younger, I guess the question I ask you is, like, why would we go with the guy that's 2 years older?
I think, well, the one that's 2 years older is still just flat out better. I think he's just a different specimen, to be honest, from everybody else. It's also perhaps probably some of the issues with Joey Bosa creeping in with my thought process about Nick Bosa, in the sense that, Joey's the type that gets like a little bit of a nick and a pull, and he misses like 6 weeks, right? You don't see him from early October until like Thanksgiving. And, he waits till he's like 100% healthy and all this other stuff to kind of get back on the field, the whole take care of my body thing, yada, yada, yada. I just think Garrett is just on a different tier, just enough of a different tier today that despite the 2-year age gap, he's still number 1 for me. I fear Myles Garrett more than I feared Nick Bosa. And perhaps it would be wise for me to fear Nick Bosa more than I do, but I do.
Can you let me know something, just because I don't know this, but where's Myles Garrett's brother?
I don't know.
So he's a bum on the street.
Player. I have no clue.
Right, he's some bum on the street. He's on Weight Watchers because he's like 400 pounds for all you know.
Now,
and you're
gonna
judging
tell Myles Garrett that,
and you're judging Nick Bosa because his brother gets injured.
No, what I'm saying is the notion that, like, because Joey Bosa in particular, I mean, he's very high up here too in our rankings. We're probably going to talk about him in tier 2, but he's missed some games with nicks and pulls and this and that, and he's just kind of out for a while, and sometimes be a little frustrating as an owner of Joey Bosa on an all-22 team, for example, and not always available. Some of that creeps into the way your mind thinks about Nick, even if it's more so Joey. That's all I'm saying. Myles Garrett's brother is probably an incredible guy.
I'm sure he is. And the other argument I would make, right, that thing that gets really tricky and a slippery slope to go down is, so you're taking Myles, 28 going on 29-year-old Myles Garrett over 23 going on 24-year-old Aiden Hutchinson when he's coming off of a 91 season. That's tough, right? I could almost justify Nick Bosa being like, Bosa's done it for a few years. He's still in his prime. He's got 3 years of prime left. Aiden, who knows what he'll do, but, in 3 years, we don't really know. But you could kind of make that conversation, right? We go with like the 3-year window. The 3-year window for Bosa and Hutchinson, Bosa's probably the more productive and better player. But are you really taking Myles Garrett's next 3 to 5 years over Hutchinson's?
I think I'm taking his next 3. I don't know about 5.
Right.
I think
So
3 years is the sweet spot.
But 29. So you're banking on 32-year-old Myles Garrett being as good as he is. I don't know.
No, 32. That's when that's after the 3 years. That's when he's done. But I've already won a couple championships at that point.
So you're taking age 30, 31 seasons of Myles Garrett over age 24, 25 Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, aren't the Packers like shoring up their offensive line and the Bears got better? I don't know. Maybe it's not going to be as easy for Aiden.
I don't think the Bears' offensive line got better. I think I've talked about that at nauseam.
Sure they do. They have a quarterback that doesn't sit there for an hour trying to figure out where to go with the football. That's a different topic. Okay, let's look at this, right? So just look at this weekly though, right? Okay, because here's how look at this. Just look at Aiden Hutchinson.
23.
Okay. There's a lot more blue here. There's a lot more blue here. I'm just saying. There's a difference. There's a difference. I think when you get into that, I just think I think there's a difference. You're talking someone who could be the number 1 overall player at a premium position. Let's just say even for the next 2 years, and you're in a startup draft. That might be the extra little bit that gets you to be a league winner because you have the guy at edge.
It's true. It's one of those things where, like, if I offered you Myles Garrett for Aiden Hutchinson, you had Aiden Hutchinson, you would probably say no. If I have Aiden Hutchinson and you had Myles Garrett and I offered you Aiden Hutchinson, you would still probably say no, right? It's kind of like once you own one of them, you have that feeling that the guy you have is the better choice for the next 3 years. I don't think it's Garrett. Sorry, I just don't. I think he's getting to that age where it starts to become a concern. But I understand what you're saying, where we were talking about Trent Williams when we started this thing 3 years ago, and we're like, how long does he have? He's the top guy, but he's 32 already. Now he's 35, and he's still the top dude. Like week to week, he performs the best. Injuries this past season started to hit, but like, is there something to that where these elite guys can really play much longer than everyone? Maybe because they're physically just more talented. Maybe it's because they are just so sound in what they're doing that there's less injury risk. I don't know, but like maybe there is something to that.
A little bit, but I think it's much more on the offensive line than the defensive line. So for example, if we were to just go who produced the most last season, right? I mean, there's only 2 names above 30 on this list here, and that's Khalil Mack and DeMarcus Lawrence.
Exactly.
It's probably, if you go back 5 years ago, it's probably a lot of guys who were, around their current age that were very good and just aren't there anymore. So I think the age, the cliff comes quicker at defensive end or defensive line than it does at a place like offensive tackle. And that's why, but I think to this point though, for someone like a Myles Garrett, that's not happening at 29 and a half. It's not happening at 30. I think it might happen at 32 than Trent Williams, where it might happen at 36. So that's why to me, it's like, yeah, like you mentioned, I'm not worried just yet about life after Myles Garrett or him potentially going a bit downhill for the next few years just yet. If I'm an owner of Myles Garrett on my team, I'm not there yet.
Oh man. Yeah. I think it's really hard because I think I'd still definitely take Bosa because
I feel like I gave you a lot in the last episode. Like I feel like I gave you a lot on the wide receiver episode, so you should give me Garrett number 2. I think so. And this is also your algorithm equation that you put together that has him at number 2 right now.
So we're going to give Garrett number 2. We'll give Bosa 3. And then I think we talk about the next group of guys. And the next group of guys is also extremely hard because we're staring at Max Crosby, who's sitting there at 4, who's still 26 years old, going to be 27. And if you pull up his card, it's a lot of blue, right? 92 last year before that, let's see, 90.1, year before that, 91.4. So he has a 3-year span of really freaking good football. And that defensive interior just got really good as well. So there's going to be less pressure on Max to be just, lone wolf. So it's hard to bet against Max Crosby.
Yeah, and I don't think this happens in 2024. He plays so many snaps. He never comes off the field. Eventually that's got to wear on you, right? I mean, not all 30-year-olds have the same amount of mileage on their legs, right? When Max Crosby's 30 years old, how many snaps is he going to have under his belt? Like 7,000, 8,000 at that point? Like there's a lot of tread on those tires already for 26 years old going on 27. So yeah, he's fantastic now, but I see 26.8 and my brain goes to like 28.8 because he's played so many snaps. He never comes off the field. I feel like that eventually catches up to you, even if it's not yet.
The other thing too is he is, recovering drug addict, right? So
Jeez, you're going there.
No, I'm just saying it like that does have a thing, like props to him. He's been amazing. He's had an amazing career. He's going to continue to have an amazing career, but yeah, like every day is a blessing at this point, and you have to think that there is some wear and tear from that as well that, does affect your aging process. So that is a concern of mine. I think that's a legitimate concern, right? It's like, this is fantasy football. It's all fun and games, but like, do you think about that stuff? You probably should. So if it's not Max Crosby, who's the guy that you're kind of putting out there for number 4?
I think it's Aiden Hutchinson. I think at his age, it's him. And then after Aiden Hutchinson, that's when I start to go Will Anderson Jr. and that's when you start having that conversation.
Okay. So I'm good with Aiden. I think he's earned that spot already, which is pretty crazy. He's done a great job in Detroit, just looks phenomenal. You love the pairing, the personalities with the coaches, and it's just a really good fit. It's a good culture. And again, after 2 years, 80.7 rookie year, 91 in year 2, that upward trajectory is looking really good. So I'm a big fan. We will like to see Aiden Hutchinson at number 4. And then I think you're right. The next conversation, and I do think it's a really close group with Crosby, Josh Allen, and Will Anderson. And I think that's the group that we need to debate.
Yeah. And I think you might have convinced me to put Will Anderson at the top of that trio there. I think you did it.
Let's take a look at Josh Allen first, right? Because we haven't had any discussion about him.
I have a lot of shares of Josh Allen. But that elite play, we really only started to see this year. He was very good for the previous 2 years. And yeah, this was his breakout, or last year was his breakout in that contract year, or he signed this new contract. So there's always that little bit in the back of your mind too. I think the real Josh Allen is in a given year between the 8th and 10th, 11th, 12th best rusher in the league, which is fantastic. But I don't think that puts him atop this tier for me, or this grouping.
Wow. I don't know if I'm putting him that low, but I kind of agree with you. And I'm always hesitant to bet on a guy after a big contract year. I'm always hesitant to do that. I also think, like I've talked about this about the Jags, it's an organization that struggles to get guys to buy into the culture and want to play there. So it is difficult to see the situation continuously improve. So I think I'm all right with moving Josh Allen down a bit. But Will Anderson or Max Crosby, for all the reasons we just had a whole conversation about, Myles Garrett over Hutchinson, same kind of conversation happens. In the next 3 years, are you taking the 90 grading that has existed for 3 straight years with Max Crosby, or are you just betting on the upside of Will Anderson for the next foreseeable future, right? It's a big grading difference just from what we've seen on the football field.
It is. And Crosby's situation got better. He got help. He has had no help. He's had no help. I think it was our friends Sam and Steve who said, they built that defense around Robert Spillane. That's unsustainable. And now they have help on the defensive line with Christian Wilkins, and they're tougher up front now. And I like the fit, at least on that side of the ball, with Antonio Pierce there. So like you mentioned the cultural fit with Aiden Hutchinson in Detroit and how it just kind of works. It works right now. Crosby's situation with Antonio Pierce. Yeah, so it's hard to go against that because his situation got better and he's already been at that elite level.
Yeah, it's so hard because both situations got better. Will Anderson is 5 years younger, 4 years younger, and there is so much promise there. I still think I go Crosby because we have seen that elite grading, and there really is no reason for it not to continue. I think it's a really close 1-2 there, but I think Crosby's my 5 and Anderson's my 6.
Yeah, let Anderson grow a little bit so that his two best games aren't against the Denver Broncos and the Tennessee Titans in the back half of the season, and then I think he can make his case to go higher.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to read out my tier 2. Will Anderson moving from tier 2 to tier 1, so I'll leave him out of this. Josh Allen falling out of tier 1 based on this conversation, being put into that tier 2 conversation. But tier 2 to me is interesting because there's guys with upside. And again, this is how it's so different between the receiver position and the edge position, because this break really is significant, right? Jalen Phillips, we talked about a little bit before. Does he exist in tier 2? We'll talk about it. Rashawn Gary coming off of an injury as well. Does he still belong in tier 2? Laiatu Latu, rookie, again, are we betting on that upside? Dallas Turner, another rookie, are we betting on that upside? Montez Sweat has been playing at a pretty high level, but not an elite level. And then Alex Highsmith, guy that pretty underrated throughout his career, but continuously has improved and has graded out very, very highly the last 2 years. Are we betting on him continuing that upward trajectory and getting better? Those are the guys that I had in tier 2. I think there are it's not great, right? Like that tier 2 wasn't fantastic. It's not that exciting. There are guys I'm excited about, but nothing that I feel really sure being like, yeah, this guy's definitely the top of this tier. And there might be other guys that you're saying, no, I think this guy needs to be, right? Like you might make an argument for Joey Bosa. There might be people out there doing that. Or TJ Watt, right? TJ Watt maybe needs to be in this tier. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
So you don't have Joey, TJ, or Danielle Hunter in your tier 2?
I do not.
Oof. You're making some people mad.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm one of them.
I'm not sorry for you. I'm really only sorry to Pittsburgh fans because I feel like Watt maybe deserves to be in this tier. I don't think the other two do.
I think Watt definitely deserves to be in this tier. It depends how much you really factor age here, because the thing is, tier 2 for wide receiver looks a lot better than tier 2 for edge rusher, right? So whereas in wide receiver, when we were going through this exercise and wondering where exactly do we slot like a Devontae Adams, who's fantastic, but he's up there in age, and there's all these other very good young players. That's not quite as strong here for the young players as it is at that wide receiver position. So to me, I think those guys like definitely for sure TJ Watt, Joey Bosa, I think they forced their way into tier 2.
Okay.
And then, man, Danielle Hunter, I mean, I know I spoke about it earlier in this offseason, but he had a really bad situation with very little help this past season in Minnesota. I think his double team rate doubled in 2023 versus 2022. He's got Will Anderson on the opposite side of him now. I think 2024 looks a lot closer to 2022 than it does 2023, which was still very good. I think all three of them could force their way into this tier.
It's tough. And I mean, his contract kind of speaks to it, where I don't have it in front of me, but he did not get a ton of money this offseason as a free agent, right? I think if the NFL still thought he was a tier 2 edge rusher, he would have gotten a big contract, and he didn't. I'm happy to talk about it. We could see where
he maybe broke his back or something, though. Like I don't know.
You're not making your case, buddy.
Just watch the tape. Isn't that what we do here?
Yeah, exactly. But I think let's start at the top, right? So tier 2, who would the next guy be to you? I'm pretty sure it's Josh Allen, but I'm open to talking about it.
It's Josh Allen to me only because, Well, not only because he's also fantastic. So yeah, it's Josh Allen because he's got the best combination of production and age on his side here and profile. As much as I also really do like Alex Highsmith, who's continuously improved, I think probably seeing a settlement somewhere in the 80s here for Alex Highsmith. So I considered him as well. The three names I considered for this very next spot were Allen, Highsmith, and TJ Watt.
Okay, let's pull up TJ Watt, right? Because TJ Watt is going to be playing at 30 years old this year. And again, that 3-year window is looking real small for TJ Watt, but the grading has just been so elite, right? 91.3, 91.6, 89.5, 81.7, and then last year, 91.9. And week to week, right? Like that's one of the best week to weeks we've seen, where not only is there a lot of blue, but there's not much difference between the blue and the down weeks, right? The down weeks, I'm using quotation marks. He's a really special player. And I think if he wasn't 30 years old, I'd agree with you including him in this. But I just can't comprehend taking a 30-year-old player again, unless you know that you are a top team in the league that will be fighting for a championship. If you like right now, I'm kind of thinking it's just, I don't know what the rest of my team is. I just know I have to pick a player.
So you would take 27-year-old Montez Sweat over TJ Watt right now?
No, I'm not saying that either, but I would probably take Dallas Turner, who's 22, 21. He's 21. I think he just turned 21.
Then why are we not talking about Chop Robinson?
We maybe should, right?
I'm just saying if we're gonna go you're a rookie, so we're just going off of projection here.
There's a few reasons.
Let's start including those guys in the mix.
There are a few reasons. One, Dallas Turner was my number one edge rusher in this draft class, right? I did include Laiatu Latu in the tier 2. I did not include Chop, but I had Dallas as my number one. I think he's basically replacing Danielle Hunter in Minnesota, right? So we know what his role looks like, and he's a really good body build comp for that role. It should work really well. Great defensive-minded coach there that should get the most out of him. Chop, also pretty young, 21.4, right? So like he's still in his, he will be playing at 21 years old, but he goes to Miami where essentially everybody else on the edge has gotten hurt. Rumors kind of like apparently the reason behind Miami making that pick, even though they spent big on Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, right? They spent big money, big picks there. The reason they went to that well again is because apparently the reason these guys are getting hurt is because they are playing too much snaps and they're doing it in Miami, right? The heat in the summer and the wear and tear on these guys' bodies is tremendous. So while a team in Minnesota might get away with having 2 edge rushers playing the entire year, you don't have that luxury in Miami. So with that, do I know that Chop is going to get consistent snaps where I'm not going to have to worry about his week-to-week snaps for the next 2 seasons, right? Because right now, he's the 3rd best edge rusher on on Miami. He just is, right?
He's the only healthy one.
Correct. That does mean something.
I agree with you as to why he wouldn't be above Turner in these rankings because of the situation, but for just a whole host of different reasons, or not even a whole host. It's just that I just think they're done. I think another knee injury for Chubb and an Achilles for Phillips is just, that's it. You just can't count on those guys anymore. And that's where we haven't talked about Phillips yet in tier 2. I hate to be that guy because like I just don't draft that guy. I just don't draft him anymore. He had medical concerns coming into the NFL, and now he has a late season Achilles injury. I don't count for him for anything in 2024, and then beyond, there's a large doubt as to whether you're ever getting the same player. For that, I just go elsewhere, regardless of where I am.
What got so hard, Ray, making these tiers, right, is because we're talking about rookies right now, right? We're talking about like the youngest of the young guys that have a ton of upside. And then we're talking about the oldest of the old that have elite play. But what we missed out on the receiver, and I do regret it, right, is talking about Chris Godwin and Deontay Johnson, right? Like those players that are probably in their prime right now, but their prime is just good, not great. There are edge rushers like that I haven't mentioned yet. And I'm curious, like, should Brian Burns be talked about? Should Greg Rousseau, Jermaine Johnson, Trey Hendrickson, should There's other guys, Carl Granderson, John Franklin Myers, Josh Sweat, Chase Young.
Jermaine Johnson. Why are we not talking about Jermaine Johnson?
That's a good question, right? Like
I
because
think
it's hard because
this is
the reason being, Ray, the reason being is because there's two actually. For him specifically, there's two. But the reason being is because when I looked at him as a prospect, he was much lower on my prospect ranks than I have a guy like Dallas Turner. That's number one. Number two, he is in an extremely crowded edge room in New York on the Jets, right? They traded for another guy, Hassan Reddick, right? Like they've drafted edge rushers like 3 years in a row and then go and trade for another one. It's kind of like if they're so sure Jermaine Johnson is this guy, this dude, and he's playing like he could be, why are they doing that?
Because Aaron Rodgers is gone in 12 months, 24 tops, and they're just going for it. So just buy it. Swipe the credit card. I think it's just that simple. So, I mean, I think he's still going to have a big role, a great role. And if he gets to be spelled a little bit more often every now and again, that just means he's fresher throughout the year. For me, I'm fine with that. I don't have to worry about him getting worn down. And now we get into the projection of the team situation as a whole. But you would think if they have a good offense with Rodgers back and everything, and this guy can go ahead and just be, focused as a pass rusher and be a great athlete, then even better.
Can you go to his weekly summary?
Situations for himself. Where you want me to go? Weekly summary?
Yes, please. Yeah, I just wanted to see if there was any weeks where he just didn't meet the snap count, but it looks like he comfortably did every single week.
You are underselling this guy.
I might be underselling this guy, right? But like, what about the other guys I just mentioned? Is there anybody else that stood out to you? Right?
The reason
it just Burns need to be in this conversation. Does Kayvon Thibodeau have to be in this conversation? Does Carl Granderson?
No, Kayvon has to prove himself once more. I get the reasons for his regression are easily explained, and it's fine. But I think he's a clear tier 3 guy. I think those other names, they certainly can be.
Pull up Carl Granderson, right? Like, just pull him up.
Or I'm sure I got to go down. Yeah.
27 years old.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the same pedigree. Like, you're talking Jermaine Johnson, you have first round draft capital, a clear progression in his performance from year 1 to 2, and some help coming his way year 3 with the overall team being better, assuming, Rodgers plays more than 4 snaps this year.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that's enough where if I'm just looking at these two guys, if you just presented these two names to me, I say for sure they can't be in the same tier. Jermaine Johnson has to be in the tier above him.
Okay, so let's keep it. So what I'm hearing is the only guy that I just mentioned that should be included in this conversation is Jermaine Johnson. And with
let's start there.
So Jermaine Johnson, you were talking about TJ Watt. I was talking about Dallas Turner. The only other guy I really wanted to mention was Rashawn Gary, right? If you open up his player card here, again, Packers homer, I got to talk about it.
Where's this guy? I know I'm scrolling right past
him. You were on him. He's there. Yep. Cool. So 3-year window, right? That's pretty darn good. It's coming in a little blurry on my end, but 89.3, 82.9, and an 80 this past year. So again, it's not elite. It's not that tier 1, but it's pretty darn good. The issue is he had, an injury, I think in 2022, 2023, he was able to play, but it wasn't necessarily like he was back at that high level. You're looking at the end there, right? There's a lot of poor grading in the end of that season last year. But does another year removed from the injury make him progress back to what he was maybe in 2022, right? And should he be, at only 26 years old, should he be that guy that we're talking about as this is the gamble I want to take at pick number? We're at now edge number 8 is who we're picking.
Yes. I think I would take Gary over. Gary over Johnson is close. I think I would take Gary over Johnson because I'm always optimistic when you get that extra year removed. The fact that he came back and still performed so well. Yes, you saw a bit of the sort of leveling off, maybe the wearing down. Because again, this is not someone who had a natural, normal offseason last year. He was rehabbing this. He was not training optimally. He was trying to just get back on the field, period. Now, a year removed from that, I think is where you see the back to normalcy, which I'm seeing more 2021 and 2024 than I am 2023, which is still very good. I think 2023 established his baseline as still being a very good player, top 24 edge rusher overall. I think a year removed from that, he can contend for top 10 status as an edge rusher now that he's, again, more time removed from the injury, ideally back to full health. Yeah, I think I would put him as the next name on this list. Which would be what, 9 or 8?
8. Rashawn Gary,
yep.
number
I
8.
think that's
Love that.
For him.
Okay. Can you open up Will McDonald for me? Just because I don't remember off the top of my head, like what his play. I remember watching him play, and I honestly really liked it, but just how he graded. I just love this dude's tenacity. It's
not bad.
It's awesome.
He was just,
old
rookie.
Old rookie, 71.6. Okay. So you're probably not taking him over Jermaine Johnson.
Nope.
Or the other guys we talked about. So, okay. So Jermaine Johnson, Dallas Turner, Latu, Highsmith, Watt. I think that's where we're at.
So the argument I would make for Jermaine Johnson over those other young names like a Latu is that Johnson has put on the good tape already. He's put the good performance on tape, while those other young guys haven't.
I like it. Number 9, Jermaine Johnson. Wow.
Then to that end, if I'm going to keep up with that theme, I got to go TJ Watt.
I don't know, dude. It's different
because
Jermaine Johnson's like 20. How old is Jermaine Johnson?
Yeah, I get he's 25, but TJ Watt's performance is also different. At a certain point, that has to matter. We're not talking 82 grading overall. You're grading as a top 15 edge rusher 2 years in a row. Yeah, we're talking your TJ Watt. You're grading top 5 year in and year out. So if I get 2 more years of top 5 play, or a year of top 5 and a year of top 12 before your age 32 season, okay, fine.
Over Highsmith.
Yes, because he's got the longer track record. This looks nice. It's like, it's one of those, like, you want to show this chart at a sales meeting because it's always just kind of like this linear progression, but Watt's just different. I mean, I think maybe you don't agree. I would bet much more likely we see high 70s from Highsmith than a repeat of 2023. And that's still very good. I really like Highsmith. I just think given Watt's pedigree and track record year over year over year, I would put that above the consistent progression, but eventually that progression levels off and you have a little bit of ebb and flow. I think it's just natural to see some of that with Highsmith, whereas Watt is what he is. It didn't take him 4 years to be elite, and he wasn't elite for just, a season and great for another season. No, he's just been elite year over year. And to me, that's the difference.
Yeah. And I agree with it, because in 2-3 years, when Cam Hayward and TJ Watt are no longer on the team, I don't think the play looks the same for Highsmith. I just don't think he's that guy, right? Like, he's probably getting a lot of favorable matchups right now. Mm-hmm. So, okay. 10 is TJ Watt. I'm writing it in.
Yeah. We're going to get hate for him being as low as 10, but I don't think we could have kept him off the top 10. That would have been.
Yeah. And I kind of like that. I think that's fair. Now it's Latu, Turner, Sweat, Highsmith, Bosa.
Bosa. We got to talk about Bosa.
The injuries, man.
I know.
Injuries. It's every year. It's not, if it was just this 1 year, he's been healthy otherwise. That's just not the case. He's going to be playing at 29 years old. We're looking at 3 years of injuries, right? It's 2021.
2 years. Okay. 2 years of injuries for the most part. I think he only missed one game in 2021.
Because even if he has a great year this year, right? I just think that as he gets older, it's just going to happen more and more often. Just can't talk about him yet. I just can't.
Okay, that's fine. I agree. Seeing that's the stark reminder as to why you would put him in the back end of this tier, if not the top of tier 3. So fine. So Latu, Sweat.
Yeah, pull up Sweat.
Smith.
We haven't looked at Sweat yet. So Montez Sweat was traded from the Eagles to the Bears this past season. He went to the Bears and essentially rejuvenated that entire defense, made them look truly different. But it wasn't elite graded season for him either. It was pretty good, right? Like 74.8 is a good player on your all 22 team. It's just not a difference maker, right? Like it's more, a lot of guys in your league, you're going to have edge rushers scoring out at 74.8. So are we thinking that the Bears did enough in that situation to get the most out of Sweat? Personally, I don't. I think they did a lot to their offense to make those guys look better. I don't know if they did a lot to their defense to make Sweat look better.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like the defensive front in Washington was bad while Sweat was there. I mean, he was in a favorable situation there too.
I said the Eagles, yeah, Washington. Sorry,
He said I didn't even realize you said the Eagles. I would have swept right over that. But yeah, so I think he is what he is. I think he's a high 70s, low 80s type of grader overall, a nice all around piece, a really good player, but over. But are you taking a rookie over that? Because that's very valuable. I feel like I just really poo-pooed how good Montez Sweat really is. Are you taking a rookie over that consistent?
Open up Burns. I didn't have Burns in the tier 2 conversation. He's in my tier 3, but let's open him up.
He's frustrating as a Burns. He's a melonhead. He's frustrating now. Granted, he's in you would think, new scheme, new system now. He's got a fantastic defensive interior unit. He's got Kayvon Thibodeau on the other side of him, so he's never really been in as complete a situation like this on the defensive front. Yes, he had Derek Brown, who really came into his own just last year. You kind of see that reflected in some of the improvement in Burns' grading overall. But it's not as great as you would think. It's not as great as you would think. It could be. I think he's got the upside to outperform every other name on this list in 2024. He just has not done it yet. So what do you do with that type of player who's got the talent, has flashed it, is now in a position or in a situation to where he can ideally scratch his ceiling, right? But hasn't done that consistently yet. So there's reasons for optimism that he will, but he hasn't yet. Where do you put that compared to these other names? Because I feel like all these other names we mentioned, again, we're sort of, what did you say? Banking on the potential versus the production. We're starting to get into that tier after this name. So,
see, I think Burns is pretty close. I think I do go with so Dallas Turner versus Brian Burns in my mind, right? They were similar prospects in my mind, like pure prospects before the NFL. I would have had them in a similar class of prospect where neither of them were elite prospects to me, but they were maybe just below that group as really good edge rushing prospects. Turner, I get an additional 5 years of in the NFL, right? And like, that's not a guarantee, right? We only look at 3 years. I'm the guy that preaches that, but I don't know. I think I probably go Turner, just because, again, I really like the situation with the coach. I know what the role looks like because we just saw Danielle Hunter playing it. I think I'm going that way.
I don't feel strong enough about Burns to fight it. I just wonder if, knowing what we know about Turner as a prospect, he is a bit unrefined, which we talked about, that Bama situation. Sometimes that just kind of lends itself to that, to where there's so much in front of you. You're just like this cog in this machine. And then your time comes and you ball out because you're a fantastic player, you're a fantastic athlete and all that, but you're not quite as refined heading into the league. And there's a bit of an adjustment period here. I think there could be some growing pains with Turner, which is fine. You're talking about a 21-year-old here. I think short-term pain might be a bit strong, but short-term pain for longer-term gain is what, as long as you know that that's what you're taking on by taking Dallas Turner over a name like Brian Burns, I understand it.
Right. I think I'm going Turner, but I'll let you make the final call.
It's Turner, but then I think I would have, do I have Sweat over Burns?
Ooh, no, I think I have Burns over Sweat. Now going through it and looking at it and thinking about the situation, I think so.
Okay, but this is not, oh man. I don't know, that there's more consistency there with Sweat.
The situations. I mean,
so you're being the upside chaser now. This is yeah. You're being me.
Yeah.
A little role reversal here.
Because I believe in Burns more than I believe in Sweat. I've always believed in Burns more than I've ever believed in Sweat. I also just think like, yeah, like situation went from one being a really good defensive front. Now he's going to Chicago. It's not the greatest, but Burns is really, it is more parallel Burns's transition, right? Dexter Lawrence and the guy you mentioned before, sorry, blanking, defensive interior for the Panthers.
Oh, Derek Brown.
Derek Brown, kind of a wash, right? The cornerbacks, you have J.C. Horn, you have the
when he's
Giant,
on the field.
Yeah, with the Giants drafted a rookie last year corner, right? Like it's like, is it that much better? I don't know. But it's a little bit better. In my mind, it's Burns.
Okay. It's Burns.
12.
Let me be clear, it
Burns.
is not 1,000 push-up thing for me. So
Agreed. So Sweat being 13, though, we're just locking that in.
I think so. I don't think any of the names we really discussed here.
Well, Highsmith and Joey Bosa, I think, are the next couple guys.
Highsmith, then Bosa, for me, is pretty clear.
And
Bosa is going to be fantastic for 5 games.
Bosa over Thibodeau, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson, Trey Hendrickson.
Hendrickson belongs in this tier. The other names, no.
He's a lot older than you think he is, and that's what messed
I know. And what hurts too is we haven't talked about Greg Rousseau because I wasn't a fan of him coming into the league. He went ahead and he didn't have a junior year in college because of COVID, and he was one of those guys that just sat and worked out and kind of came back a totally different player. And I just still haven't gotten those images out of my head of his sophomore tape at Miami of just, hey, he got a sack, but he really didn't do anything on this. He really wasn't that great. That's still lodged in my head, but I mean, all he's done is prove us wrong. I still have that preconceived notion of him as a prospect. And to be fair, I think what he's put on tape so far is probably the high watermark of his performance moving forward. But I could see a consistent high 70s guy here. We're kind of talking about like a Montez Sweat level player here. Again, not exactly the same stylistically or anything, but just talking from pure grading perspective and an impact he can make on your all-22 team. But he's 24.
Right.
Do you just go ahead and just kind of shuffle the, you just swap those tags?
Well, I had him in tier 3, but you're right. Like, do you take him over?
We had him in tier 3 because we're being stubborn. We're being stubborn by having him in tier 3.
I agree. So Rousseau, Latu, Bosa, Verse, Thibodeau, Chop. Is that the next group of guys? And then Trey. Yeah, you didn't pull up Trey. You want to talk about Trey?
Yeah, let's talk about Trey. Where is Trey here? Probably down on the list because of his age. Yeah,
so he's almost 30. But it's been so good.
He's been so good. I think we got a lot of Cincinnati fans too. And you're about
That's what's making the decision for you?
Yeah. I am easily, I can be bought. All right. My ranking can be bought. That's exactly what I'm saying here. You donate to me, I will put your issues first this election season. So he's a tier 2 player. The age could knock him into tier 3. I think so. I think if I'm being true to myself and it's a startup league, I take the gamble, knowing me as an owner and kind of how I go about this. I take the gamble on a young guy, like a Latu, maybe not a Latu because his injuries scare me still and whatever.
But I'm not taking Bosa over
maybe
him.
A shot. No shot. I'm taking Bosa over Hendrickson.
That's the issue, right? So Bosa's getting pushed down. So then the conversation,
that's it. You got to be on the field. Yeah.
Right. The conversation is Rousseau, Latu, Thibodeau, Verse, Chop.
Rousseau, Latu. It's Rousseau at the top of that list. I don't care where you put any of the others.
Verse, Thibodeau, Latu. Shoot, Highsmith. We forgot about Highsmith again.
No, Highsmith is above all these guys.
He's above all these
Rousseau.
Guys.
He's after Rousseau, above everybody else.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Rousseau is 14. We're saying Highsmith is 15. And then the conversation is Latu versus Thibodeau. Chop. I think Latu being the rookie that was taken first, he goes to the Colts.
Don't
Pretty
let
good
that be your
situation.
tiebreaker. Stand on your own. Stand on your business.
I
Here.
mean, I had him above Chop in my rankings. You didn't, but I did.
I didn't.
So I would have him regardless above Chop. But Verse, I had above him. I think I like Verse. Honestly, like if I was a betting man, it's Verse. He went to the Rams. They threw so many draft picks at that front seven. It's so like different because obviously I can't say better because Donald's not there. But like
There's no
besides
way they're
Donald, Donald,
besides
it's better.
arguably the greatest defensive player of all
Right.
time, it's
But it's going to be a fun
incredible.
unit. And honestly, I thought Verse is so good. I had him as my number 2 edge rusher this draft class. I like Verse.
That's like getting evicted from my house and be like, yeah, but now I can spend more on my car. Like I said, I'm honestly indifferent to the rookie rankings here and how they sort of cluster up. I mean, I'm probably taking Chop just because age and upside and preference. But I don't feel strongly about how that cluster really shakes out. So
I'm taking Verse. I want you to make the decision between Thibodeau and Latu.
I would go Thibodeau. He doesn't have the same injury concerns. Yes, 2023 was bad, but again, it was the Giants. It was a disaster, which we could all see coming despite their success in 2022. Between Latu's injury history, the fact that they're the same age, and Latu doesn't have NFL experience under his belt just yet, and has the uncertainty of longevity given his previous history of having to medically retire and then come back and all that. It's a fantastic story. If you watch Hey Rookie, you have no choice but to love the guy. But again, if you're talking a 23-year-old with 2 years of NFL experience under his belt, who just got a top edge rusher across from him in Brian Burns, and has the best interior defensive line alongside him now, with a defense that's slowly getting better and adding talent, I take that over the Latu question marks all day.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thibodeau 17, Latu 18, Chop. I'm going to give it to you at 19. Does Jalen Phillips come back into the conversation at any point?
No.
Wow. So the next guys I have on the list are Joey Bosa, Trey Hendrickson, Trayvon Walker, Tyree Wilson, Darius Robinson, Will McDonald, right? Like this again, the group of guys just could be a mile long.
Yeah.
But I think it's Joey Bosa, Trey Hendrickson, Trayvon Walker.
I think it has to be Hendrickson here. He's dependable at the very least.
Dependable in an awesome situation.
Yeah. In a great situation. They're also getting their quarterback back. Complimentary football always helps.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hendrickson's the clear move here. And then, given the other names on this list, you hold your nose and go, Joey Bosa, please play a full season.
Right. And even if you do get one full season out of him, it might be like, the one that wins you the championship. So It might be worth it. So yeah, 21, Joey Bosa. Okay. Pick the young guy. You know what I mean? Tell me the name that sounds good to you. Trayvon Walker, Tyree Wilson, Darius Robinson, Will McDonald, Miles Murphy, Chris Braswell, Braylon Trice, Adisa Isaac, Jonah Ellis, George Karlaftis. Are there any guys in that group? Because that's kind of tier 4 for me. Are there any guys in that group that you're going, I'm betting on that guy over the rest of them?
I think Karlaftis had a bit of an improvement, had a really bad rookie year. Well, first, I think the name I'm putting up there is Darius Robinson, with the understanding that I'm not expecting much in year one. I always say you don't draft your rookies for what they're going to do for you during their rookie year. And Arizona is still just completely void of talent on that side of the ball for the most part. So I'm not expecting much from Darius Robinson year one, but he's someone who could line up all across the line and be an impact player. So to me, his floor is very high and there's some upside there. He's young. That situation is going to get better. That team is only going to continue to improve. I would put Robinson above those other names. At the worst case, injuries aside, is he kind of has some struggles out of the gate like these other names have had. So worst case, he's just like these other guys. So I only see upside here.
So you know my guy is Miles Murphy. Can you pull him up just so we can look at what he did as a rookie? Playing with Trey
Let me
Hendrickson,
erase
right? Like,
that. Where is he the other way? Go ahead.
yeah. So like, he's a guy that I really liked as a prospect. The numbers were not great as a rookie, right? But like, I did expect that. He was 21 years old as a rookie. I expect to see a lot of improvement out of this guy. 6'5", 258. He's like exactly the build I like for an edge rusher. He's going to be the guy that I want to bet on. But Tyree Wilson is the guy that you talk about where it's the stuff is all there for him to be successful. He just was so raw, and the situation is awesome now in that front seven. Can we get the most out of him? Even if it's not this next year, is it the year after? Is there a point where we really like the gamble on Tyree Wilson? Didn't realize he's 24 years old. That's tough.
Yeah, no, there is no situation where I like it, to be honest.
What about Trayvon Walker?
It's now or never, and I don't love it. I'll find someone else at that point. Someone else will take him earlier than I would take him in a startup draft.
Okay, so we have Darius Robinson, Miles Murphy in this tier. Who else are we missing?
I mean, names for consideration, again, I think there's a few, and one of them people might jump on me for. I don't care. I would put Nolan Smith up for consideration. He wasn't bad. He was injured. There's a huge difference. But even other names too, like Odafe Owe. If we're talking young guys, Odafe Owe had a good year last year. He missed some time, so he kind of fell off the radar. But when he was healthy, I mean, he performed. So that's another young name to throw in here. I think when you consider that, I would probably put him above someone like Karlaftis, who we have on the screen here as well. So I would say Owe, Nolan Smith, and then you have on the other end of the spectrum, right? Here's Owe again. So just again, a very solid grade here, a top 25 edge rusher overall when he was playing. It's just that he missed 4 games last year, and so he didn't have the overall point scoring output. But that's another good player who, again, knew would take some time. But just needed to come into his own. Now, what are you, the 1 year wonder guy?
No, I'm just looking.
All right. But the complete other end of the spectrum, but aside from those young guys, is guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and Khalil Mack, who were elite last year, but are 32 and 33 years old, right? Khalil Mack was actually the number 3 overall edge rusher in all 22 last year. And DeMarcus Lawrence was 7th? So 2 top 7 overall players at this position. But again, we're talking 32 years old for DeMarcus Lawrence, 33 years old for Khalil Mack, some mileage on both of them, obviously. So again, most users are probably in startup drafts, but so how do you match that up with those young guys? And at this portion of the draft, may you already have like a sort of a war daddy at your first defensive end spot where you have a top 10 rusher who's 26 years. You have a Josh Allen already. Are you then taking this sure thing like a Khalil Mack and a DeMarcus Lawrence for perhaps just 2024? Or are you going with one of those younger guys we mentioned?
Yeah,
I think that's where the conversation gets interesting.
Yeah, I want one of each. Like I'll never use the term war daddy, that's for sure. But
you just heard the last 2 syllables, but that's a common term, Chris.
Never heard that in my life.
Okay.
Anyway, if I got a Max Crosby, I got a Josh Allen, I got an Aiden Hutchinson, I got one of those guys, right? Am I taking next another very young guy to get the prospect in the door? Or am I going, like you're saying, for matching that guy with a production? If I have one of the young guys and I'm pairing them with another young guy, I don't know if it gives me the same feel, right? Because there are so many young, promising players, right? We talked about a Jonah Ellis, Adisa Isaac, Braylon Trice, Chris Braswell. There's a lot of those guys that you can probably get one of them later on, but there's only 2, right? DeMarcus Lawrence, Khalil Mack, that you can get this late in the game with this kind of production, right? Somebody went and took Joey Bosa 21st out of the edge rushers, right? We did. I wanted DeMarcus Lawrence or Khalil Mack, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, it's a good thought. And here's the thing. I think if you look a little bit deeper, into both of them, right? They're DeMarcus Lawrence, the number 2 overall run defender at edge, and Khalil Mack, the 3rd overall run defender of all edges in the NFL. That lasts a bit longer. That's not quite like pass rushing, where if you lose that little extra twitch, that half step, that really saps at your effectiveness. No, you can be a dominant. I mean, Cam Jordan was one. I think he's just a tad bit older than both of these guys, who was playing very well into his early to mid 30s because of his run defense prowess. The same goes for these guys. So that run defense ages a bit better than just overall pass rush. And so they're obviously great at both. That's why they're ranked so highly overall. They're both top 20 pass rushers, pure pass rushers, but they're both top 3 run defenders at the position. So that ages quite nicely. It's not as if they get by because they're just super athletes.
Can we just talk about how like people age so differently? Like you and that guy are the same age.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
Like he looks like he could be your
demoralizing. Dad. I'm actually I'm a little bit older than him, but yes, that's right.
Yikes. Okay, so Mack or Lawrence?
Who are you taking? Des Bryant was saying last year, but yeah, go ahead.
Who are you taking, Lawrence or Mack? I think I'm going Lawrence.
Lawrence has it's the 1 year age difference, so I'm just going with Lawrence. I also like the Mike Zimmer hire for Dallas. I mean, Dan Quinn was good for a lot of individual players like a Micah Parsons and like those secondary players like a DaRon Bland. But I think the style that Zimmer plays is actually kind of a play the run into your pass rush type of style. And that works better for DeMarcus Lawrence and just the overall cohesiveness of that unit. So I kind of like where they're going there.
It's also Micah Parsons is across from Lawrence. He's young. He's on the field, knock on wood. Joey Bosa across from Khalil Mack, not young, not always on the field. So that makes a big difference too for me. Okay, so after those two guys, now that was 22 and 23. You were talking about Odafe Owe. Why don't we pull up his card while we're waiting? Nolan Smith being another guy who was a rookie last year, but definitely underperformed. A little bit of injury stuff going on. They trade away Hassan Reddick. He should get a lot more time on the field. And then I was talking about Myles Murphy. You had mentioned Darius Robinson. I think that's probably the next group now that some of those older players. I mean, Danielle Hunter is still there. Just throwing that out there. We're talking about
he's going to be there too.
I think he's probably next. Maybe we toss him in with those other older guys because it is really good.
Yeah. And the situation is fantastic. That's the thing. So here, pulling up Owe again. I mean, you see the improvement year over year. It's pretty good at 25 years old.
But here's what's going to happen to Owe, right?
Great.
This is year 3. They have another year of him. Maybe they 5th year him. Then they let him leave. He gets money to go elsewhere. And
contract year, he's going to ball out.
Yeah, but after that, he's not a Raven anymore. And he's just going to be a middling edge rusher on some other team with a big paycheck.
And the 31-year-old you're going to compare him to right now is also going to be not the same guy.
That's true.
You can at least sell high on it. If you truly believe that, you can at least sell high on a 28-year-old Odafe Owe.
He's on my team.
At some point.
Lamba Leaps, baby.
I'm not trading you for him. Yeah, I mean, you could, there you go. So you just laid out your plan to me. So I'm not going to partake in any trades with Owe with you. But you at least have that window, or he could just simply be good because remember the whole book on Owe was he had all the athletic traits, but was just couldn't put them all together before he entered the league. Right in his final college season, which was actually very good, but he had 0 sacks. He wasn't a great finisher just yet when he came into the league. He was a raw prospect, and that takes time to put it all together. The Ravens know what they're doing, so he went into a good situation, good organization overall. See a bit of a sophomore slump there, right? He's still adjusting to the league. And then he comes out with his hair on fire to start 2023, has 2 great games, misses some time in between, misses a month of football, comes back and plays quality football for the rest of the year. There's no real bad games at all in 2023. So he's putting it all together. So it might not be the situation of, just ebbs and flows. It could just be that's the progression, and it's just now can you stay healthy because you're starting to get it. I don't think I would put him lower than this.
Yeah, no, I mean I like him, but are you putting him above Danielle Hunter?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's 25.
24, Odafe Owe. And then I feel like you're going to laugh at this, but you're the Chase Young guy. I'm not, but like Chase Young, like when are we talking about Chase Young? I know he hasn't really ever reached a ceiling that we expected him to, but it doesn't mean he's a bad football player. He's been an above average football player his entire career. He is now with the Saints. We saw how that worked with Marcus Davenport last year. Not great. It's not like it helped him take off his career. But, again, this is a consistently good football player at 25 years old. Are we just done with Chase Young?
It's not that we're done with Chase Young. I think he goes here in the top 32 of the rankings. The thing with Chase Young is we've seen his best football already. And it's unfortunate, but that's what the knee injury did to him. He's just not going to be that same guy, that war daddy that we thought he would be entering the league. It's just not going to be, it's just not there anymore. The knee injury really did hamper him. So I can find an edge rusher who can give me the same type of grading and overall impact that I see here from Chase Young. And, you see a lot of yellow here, so it's a bit inconsistent. The overall end product is solid, but it's a bit of a roller coaster to get there. And at this point in this situation, I would then just take what I deem to be more of a sure thing and higher level performance from a Danielle Hunter for 1 or 2 years, because I can find somebody to give me this output. I can find somebody to give me 2023 Chase Young output. Yeah. There aren't too many other names that for a single season can give me, at least at this point, Danielle Hunter level production.
Let's put Danielle Hunter at 25. I think we need to mark him in there. Kwity Paye is a guy we haven't talked about. I think we're getting close to that area, right? So we still haven't given Darius Robinson, Myles Murphy, Kwity Paye, Nolan Smith. Those are guys that don't have a spot yet, but I am afraid of just getting so far down the road where we forget about Carl Granderson, Hassan Reddick, Franklin Myers, Josh Sweat, Bradley Chubb, Van Ginkel, right? Like there are some guys that are vets, but not, at the end of their careers. They're probably in their prime right now. They're never going to be superstars, but they're good football players and they're going to grade well for you. So I don't want to just like leave them off lists, all of them, right, without like having the conversation. But I do fall back to, I think Darius Robinson is starting to look really attractive to me at this point.
Yeah, as much as I have soft spots for certain players like a Nolan Smith, I think Darius Robinson is the pick here. Like I said, just consistent, can play up and down the line, and you know what you're going to get. That situation ideally is only going to get better, right? I mean, that there's just so devoid of talent today, even after all the draft picks they did have. That situation is going to improve as he starts to hit his stride in the league. I think you put Darius Robinson here.
You talked about how Khalil Mack, DeMarcus Lawrence were 3 and 4 in the NFL in run defense, and how that's something that ages well. Darius Robinson could be that guy too. Mm-hmm. So I like that a lot. He's in there at 26. You have Franklin Meyer up here. Again, a really good football player. Had 2 very good years before the down year last year. To be honest, I think the whole Jets organization was down last year just because they were so excited for the year and just got deflated from the very jump. Now he's with the Broncos. Also, maybe not the best situation.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I think he had his chance.
I do too. I don't think I'm taking him yet. I don't think he's in the conversation yet. But I go back to maybe Hassan Reddick needs to start becoming part of this conversation, right? If you want to find him, but while you're finding him, I'm going to go back to talking about Myles Murphy, how like you had,
you're the Murphy guy. Go ahead.
You had Nolan Smith being your guy, but Myles Murphy to me, because of the same thing, he's a big bodied edge rusher, the kind of guy I like that can do both. He can win in both ways. He can learn to be an effective pass rusher, but right now he can, he can be the effective run stopper. That was a pretty crowded edge room in Cincinnati. He was learning behind. I love him learning behind guys like Trey Hendrickson, but Hendrickson's in a contract year. There's a good chance that he's not with the team next year. And I think maybe Myles Murphy shows improvement this year, but I don't think he takes off. But the year after that, I expect him to step into a role that's asking a lot more of him. And I expect him to kind of step up and be that guy for them. It might take 2 more years, but I am really excited about Murphy. You're really excited about Nolan Smith. But you had up Hassan Reddick. Maybe we go to him and just make sure that we don't want to take a Hassan Reddick, a Carl Granderson, a Bradley Chubb, a Chase Young, a Kwity Paye before we go into those prospects.
The thing about Kwity Paye is it's just kind of uninspiring. It's just a little uninspiring.
Reddick's been pretty darn
it's
good.
It's just kind of there. Reddick has been very good. Going to be 30. I think he's like the perfect encapsulation of the New York Jets. It's like, all right, he's gonna have a year, and then what?
Yeah, but
so he kind of falls in that same bucket.
I like the year for him on the Jets. With that group of guys, again, they have a rotation of pass rushers. He doesn't have to be out there for 50 snaps a game. He can be an effective 30 snap guy and rotate. I do really like it for that 1 to 2 years of production that I think he probably has. I think this is a really attractive place to take him. And because Murphy and Nolan Smith didn't look fantastic in their rookie years, and it's going to take a while, I think I'd probably bet on Hassan Reddick before I take one of those guys. I also think I take Chase Young, but you already kind of dumped on that.
I didn't do that. The knee did that. Let's go Reddick here. I would definitely go Reddick before Chase Young.
Okay, Hassan Reddick at 27.
And now you're talking Young. I don't know. He's just not my guy. I could find that guy. I would take the young rookies over Chase, or the second year guys. Nolan is more my guy. Murphy's more your guy. I think I take the upside chance on those two before Chase Young because I can find that production elsewhere.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Okay, let's do it. I'm gonna go Nolan Smith because I think he has a more clear role this year than Murphy does, with Hassan Reddick stepping out, and I think that's a really good kind of like easy transition for him to fill that role. They're very similar skills. And then I'm going to go Myles Murphy at 29. We only have 3 spots left, so I'm getting real scared.
Man, what a fall off for Vaughn.
Yeah, I can't do that with Vaughn. He's off the list. I'm sorry. If he makes it, if he plays, he's probably fantastic for you, but you're going to get 6 games, maybe.
If that.
So we have 3 spots, and we talked about Kwity Paye, we talked about Van Ginkel, we talked about Chase Young, Bradley Chubb, Franklin Myers, Granderson, but then there is this huge list of like young guys still: Travon Walker, Tyree Wilson, Will McDonald, Chris Braswell, Braylon Trice, Adisa Isaac, Jonah Ellis, George Karlaftis, Lucas Van Ness. I have no idea.
George Karlaftis was a first-round pick, and like
so was
had a bit of a progression. Yeah,
and Lucas Van Ness did better as a rookie, 64 than Karlaftis did last year in his second year.
Okay, make the case. I'm not in love with the Karlaftis pick. I'm just trying to find the separator, because when you get down to this list, right? Because again, 12-team league, let's say, right? 2 starting edge rushers each week. You got there's your 24 right there. Now we're getting into the late 20s, early 30s. We're talking about your edge 3 guys, right? So these are going to be guys that either you are taking to provide your floor, or you're chasing a bit of upside here, because if they were sure things with upside, they would already be gone. So it's your flavor of ice cream, but then sell me on which young guy with some, theoretical upside you're taking. So sell me on Van Ness, because I'm not married to Karlaftis. I'm just throwing him out there because I feel like he's just getting disrespected by you, and I don't appreciate that.
Well, Van Ness was a true raw prospect that was, in my opinion, more of a hand in the dirt guy that the Packers said we can take him and do more. He stepped in, he played some really good snaps for us. He actually, like, if you look at that, right, like you're talking about some guys with really inconsistent grading, his is actually like pretty consistently decent. Like, it's better than a lot of the guys you were looking at. He did some really nice things in his rookie year, and it's obvious that he has the skills, the strength to do it. He just doesn't have the technique. He literally has no technique right now. But if there's a team that I'm going to bet on to teach prospects like this to be successful, it's the Packers, right? And it's Van Ness. That's why, 5 years ago with Rashawn Gary, we were like, yeah, he's just super raw. He doesn't know technique, but he's a guy that, I really like. It's like, okay, Van Ness is now 5 years later, that version of that, right? I bet on him learning more than I bet on Karlaftis learning, more than I bet on Will McDonald learning, basically any of these other guys. But does he have the skill and just the pure size, speed as Travon Walker or Tyree Wilson? No. But those guys are in situations that I just wouldn't bet on, right? So for me, it's probably Van Ness, maybe Karlaftis right after. But are we leaving Travon Walker off this list considering just the raw talent that guy has? Kwity Paye too. I love Kwity Paye, but
you love Kwity Paye. Okay.
I do. I really like Kwity Paye because again, look at that size, 6'4", 272. I like a guy that could be a run defender. He was 14th in the NFL in run defense. Like there's value there. I think we fall so much in love with the guys that just pile up sacks that you forget that it's just so much more than that. Kwity Paye is a guy that, like, it's great now, right? You have Kwity Paye on one side and Latu on the other. Go let Latu be your sack guy. But Kwity Paye is going to silently have 75 to 80 grading every single year, and it's going to be good football. So I really like Kwity Paye, and just he's still 25. I think I go Van Ness over Paye, but I think those guys are very close to making the top of the list. But again, we only have, what did I say, 3 spots left?
You're holding the pen and paper. Yeah, you tell me. The thing, I'm with you more on Paye than I am on Van Ness. I don't know. I see it more with Paye than I do Van Ness, to be honest. And it could just be that total lack of technique. Travon Walker just has to show something, and he hasn't shown anything. I can't put him anywhere near here.
I can't put him above Chase Young, right? Like Chase Young to me is giving me solid grading and is still young.
Yes.
Those guys are like a year apart.
Yeah. Let's just stop mentioning Tyree Wilson and Travon Walker. Let's just stop.
I'm just crossing them off. They're off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whichever order you want to pay.
I'm going Kwity Paye at 30.
Yeah, I want. Yeah. And then Van Ness, or is Van Ness before him? Oh, man,
I think we need to decide if Chase Young is making this list or not.
I think at this point, I'm trying to find a young guy that I feel strongly enough about for Chase Young. I think I put Karlaftis above Chase Young. Karlaftis is headed towards that same level of recent Chase Young production. So why not? Maybe there's some more there. There's more to it for the younger player who's entering his 3rd year. They brought Chris Jones back, so he has some stability there. They got that, that extension locked up. Let him grow. This defense as a whole is getting, it's been getting incrementally better, and I think he's a part of that. So if I'm trying to if I'm trying to view Chase Young as a nice floor setter for me, to where I can depend on some, mid 70s grading, kind of some balance here or there. There's going to be some up and down weeks because it's not the most consistent 70, but you get there. Then for that, I'll take the young guy that's kind of headed that way. I think that's in the realistic sort of next step for Karlaftis. And then the question with Karlaftis is there anything more beyond that? Or is that what he is? If that's what he is, then he's just the Chase Young we're discussing now, but a couple years younger.
That's a good point. I mean, I'm going to make the argument for you too, right? Because I've been saying things against George Karlaftis, but I do like George Karlaftis. And one of the things is I'm pretty sure he was born in Greece, and football is like fairly new to him. And, you talk about like guys that's happened to. It's like, how about Giannis in the NBA, right? Like a guy that
is not Giannis, but
I'm not saying he's Giannis, but I'm saying like a guy that really didn't know the sport. And even today, you look at Giannis's game, and it's like, for as talented as he is, he still doesn't really know how to play basketball all that well. And like Karlaftis is this guy that probably doesn't really know how to play football all that well yet, but the physicality is there. The willingness to learn is there. I did think he stepped into a much bigger role last year and did a nice job in that role. Again, learning the things that he needs to do to be successful. I'm good at putting Karlaftis at 31, but I think that the difference between Karlaftis and Van Ness is almost like there is no difference in terms of choosing between them. I think you could literally toss them in the air, and whichever one lands in your hand, you're going to take. But also, again, Chase Young. So like, how do I leave Chase Young off this list when he's a consistently 75 grader, still 25 years old, with, some skills that none of these guys have?
Well, that would be the 32nd slot then, right? unless
That
you
means
have
we're
another
leaving.
name.
That means we're leaving Lucas Van Ness off the list. And again, I don't see any difference
Oh,
between Van Ness and Karlaftis.
that's you got the paper. I thought we had 2 slots left. I don't know.
Got one.
Oh man. So he's left off. I'm sorry, man. That's what knee injuries do to you.
Okay.
I
All
would
right,
leave
Van
Chase
Ness.
Young off then, and then put Van Ness at 32.
Van Ness is 30. Yeah, Baron Browning is fun. I like him a lot.
He's fun. I don't think I don't think you could put him here just yet, but he's fun.
I can't because his role hasn't been big enough, and he's also 25. Like Van Ness and Karlaftis, their roles aren't big enough, but they're 22. Like it is different.
And Browning, I think, was primarily a linebacker for a while too. There's some adjustment there, and he's always kind of had the profile of and the athleticism of an edge rusher, but never quite full time adopted it. Mm-hmm. So that's a name to keep in mind.
Granderson, dude. We left Granderson off the list.
I'm not that. Yeah, I don't know why you're so torn up about Carl Granderson being left off. I mean, Boye Mafe is one that I feel like could have made this list. I think he's right after. So we're talking snubs now, right? I think Boye Mafe could be considered a snub. Baron Browning more so a sleeper who can emerge and make his way onto this list next year. Isaiah Foskey, were you the Foskey guy?
You love the Foskey guy,
but missed time last year, not fantastic. So it's more of a let's wait and see. I think with him, right? Let's just see how this ends up.
Yep. Yeah, I can't put him on a list yet. I just can't.
Yeah, I think Zadarius Smith still performing very well, but like a tick below those like DeMarcus Lawrence and Khalil Mack type names.
Yeah.
And so for that, I think that keeps him off this list, but one who may give you better output, or likely will give you better output than some of the last handful of names on the top 32, at least in 2024. So that's another one to keep in mind. So it's funny. It's like you feel this dearth, like this little patch of uncertainty, like in the middle of the top 32 ranking, right? Like those late teens, you start to feel pretty barren. Then after you get the 32 names down, you're like, yeah, well, what about Boye Mafe? What about this guy? What about so I feel like the depth with edge rushers kind of in those tier 3, 4-ish type of players, whereas wide receiver is just everywhere. And particularly in like those second and third tiers. AJ Epinesa is another one. I'm not his biggest fan, and he's really had that one legit year. But if it happens again, he'll be 26 next year, and now we're talking about him on this list as well. So there's a lot of candidates. Any of them stick out to you? You want to talk about more? But I think those are some good ones. Brandon Graham is going to be like 85 years old, but he was still kicking it. So
yeah, we talked about the Saints being this organization that kind of always like they can't ever build the future because they're not willing to like let go of the past a little bit, right? So it's a little hard to put Foskey in this because he's part of that rebuild, but like I just don't know what that rebuild is inevitably going to look like. And they had Brian Bresee last year and Foskey, two guys that I loved, but what else have they done? What other things are they doing, right? Yes, they went and got Chase Young, but to me, that's just, they had Davenport last year. They get Chase Young this year. They're subbing out one for the other. Young is obviously better than Davenport, but I just don't know how much that situation is going to improve to help those guys out. I did love the Kool-Aid McKinstry pick for the Saints. So that does help guys like Foskey and Bresee a little bit. That's a guy that I'm definitely going to have like honorable mention, right? Like I'm going to make slides for this for like Instagram and stuff. And it's like, there's going to be an honorable mention slide for edge rusher. There just has to be.
Well, you better damn put one for Tuli Tuipulotu too. Like I get he was inconsistent, but he might make us look foolish in 12 months. I mean, he started off pretty low and then he has like those clunker games. Broncos was an absolute stinker, but young player. You think the Chargers are kind of finding their way. I mean, on defense, it was always kind of okay, but finding their way now, new identity. This could be a cornerstone of that defense too. So he could rocket up these rankings.
Learning behind Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, right? Like
Bosa insane. And then Bosa, tweaks a psoas muscle, and then it's the Tuli Tuipulotu show thereafter.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so. Sounds like we're going to see Tuipulotu in some of these Instagram graphics coming out, but I think that does it. Ojabo, hate to say it, I loved it, but Achilles injury, I don't know. And then again, just not available. I think had some promise.
You know what, man? I think that's probably it. There's a million guys we could talk about at the end of this, but I think we did a good job making that 32. Everybody, thanks for tuning in as always. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at all22_PFF, and give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts. And have a great day.
Go.